In June 1944, the USS Essex cut through the endless expanse of the Pacific, carrying over 3,000 men and nearly 100 aircraft. From above, it might have looked like a floating fortress, a marvel of steel and firepower. But life aboard was far from safe. Every inch of the ship was a machine of war, designed for speed and precision. Yet that very complexity made it unforgiving. Sailors slept stacked in cramped bunks shoulder to shoulder, while corridors were narrow and crowded, leaving little room for error. The ship never slept. Engines roared day and night, deck crews hammered and repaired, and aircraft mechanics moved with constant urgency. Even before the first plane launched, sailors were already deep in a cycle of inspections, maintenance, and preparation, because one small mistake, a loose cable, a misaligned catapult, a dropped tool, could trigger disaster. On the flight deck, the chaos was mesmerizing and terrifying at the same time. Planes roared into the sky in rapid succession, catapults launching them into combat, while arresting cables snapped planes back with bone-jarring force. Every takeoff and landing was a gamble, with wind, fuel, and human error threatening instant catastrophe. Sailors wore helmets, goggles, and ear protection, yet the deafening noise became part of the rhythm of life. Each deckhand had to move with precision, knowing that a single wrong step could mean being crushed under wheels or thrown into the sea. A pilot returning from a mission could be injured, disoriented, or running low on fuel, and deck crews had seconds to respond, hooking, guiding, and arresting planes in a dance of split-second timing. Below deck, the conditions were even harsher. Engine rooms boiled with heat, ammunition magazines carried the ever-present risk of explosion, and maintenance bays were dark, crowded, and perilous. Fires could ignite in seconds, turning steel corridors into ovens, and sailors knew that a single spark near fuel or munitions could engulf the ship in flames faster than anyone could react. Water was rationed, sleep was stolen, and the stench of sweat, fuel, and metal filled every compartment. Sanitation facilities were overwhelmed, lines for meals stretched for hours, and men fought fatigue while performing physically demanding work. Every sailor understood the fragile balance of life aboard. A dropped wrench, a misread signal, or a small lapse in attention could cascade into a catastrophic chain of events. Yet, despite the danger, life continued with rigid discipline. Crews trained relentlessly, meals were prepared for thousands in chaotic kitchens, and sailors adapted to the relentless schedule. In these moments of daily survival, friendships were forged, trust became a lifeline, and courage was not an act, but a necessity. Men relied on each other for every task, from fueling planes to sealing compartments, from firefighting to guiding aircraft on takeoff. Every man aboard the Essex carried the knowledge that one day the roar of engines might be replaced by the scream of bombs, that any misstep could mean death, and that survival required every ounce of focus, skill, and determination. Even during moments of calm, tension never fully lifted. Sailors knew that the Pacific was vast but merciless, and threats could appear without warning. Storms could turn the deck into a slick, dangerous battlefield. Waves could batter the hull, and even a simple maintenance error could escalate into disaster. Yet in these conditions, the men of the Essex endured, demonstrating remarkable ingenuity, discipline, and resilience. They were more than a crew. They were a tightly knit organism, each man a vital component in a machine where failure was not an option. The USS Essex was more than a ship. It was a living, breathing war machine, and its crew were its heartbeat, balancing on the razor's edge between triumph and disaster with every passing day. Each mission launched, each deck cleaned, each engine monitored was a testament to the courage and determination of those who lived in the deafening, unforgiving world of a World War II aircraft carrier.
The flight deck of the USS Essex was a world of organized chaos, a place where every second mattered and one small mistake could mean death. From sunrise to sunset, the roar of engines never ceased. Planes lined up on the steel runway, propellers slicing the air with a deafening roar, while catapults screamed and launched aircraft into the skies above the Pacific. The deck was slick with oil and fuel, a dangerous mixture that made every step a calculated risk. Deck crews ran across the steel surface, waving signals, adjusting cables, fueling planes, and performing last-second checks as if time itself were their enemy. The air was thick with exhaust, the smell of burning fuel and the metallic tang of sweat. Every takeoff was a gamble, every landing a delicate dance. Arresting cables snapped across the deck like live wires, catching planes in a violent, controlled stop. Mechanics and flight deck crews had to be alert at all times, their eyes scanning for sparks, leaks, or any sign of failure. One wrong move could throw a man into a spinning propeller or beneath the wheels of a landing plane. Pilots returned from missions exhausted, often injured or carrying battle damage, and the deck crews had mere seconds to secure the aircraft and get them ready for the next sortie. The pace was relentless. Even when the sun set, lights illuminated the deck like a battlefield, and operations rarely slowed. Fuel and munitions were always nearby, ready to power the next wave of attacks, but that readiness brought constant danger. One dropped wrench, one stray spark, or a miscommunication could ignite fuel and send fire racing across the deck flight in seconds. Sailors were trained to respond instantly. Fire hoses, emergency crews, and damage control teams moved as a single unit, a living defense mechanism against chaos. The smallest error could mean catastrophe, yet the crew moved with precision honed through repetition and discipline. Noise was relentless. Engines, alarms, radios, and the pounding of boots created a deafening symphony. Yet within this cacophony, every man knew his role, his responsibility. Pilots relied on the deck crews for their lives, and the crews relied on each other to keep the ship and its aircraft alive. Every unexpected gust of wind, every mechanical failure, and every last-second maneuver tested their nerve. Even during lulls, tension never left the flight deck because the Pacific was unforgiving and the enemy was never far away. Men learned to act without hesitation, to anticipate danger before it arrived, and to perform under conditions that would overwhelm anyone unprepared. The deck was a place of constant danger, but also of extraordinary coordination. Signals flashed from wands in every direction as men guided planes to takeoff positions, directing pilots with precise gestures that could mean life or death. Cranes lifted bombs and torpedoes into place, and fuel lines hissed with volatile liquids, yet every operation was executed with practiced calm, even under extreme pressure. The heat of the sun beating down on steel, combined with the roar of engines and the scent of burning fuel, created an almost surreal intensity, a world where adrenaline became a constant companion. The deck crews moved in harmony, each man an essential cog in a machine that existed to keep planes flying and the ship alive. Even in the chaos, a rhythm emerged. Men moved as one organism, their hearts beating in time with the roar of engines, their minds focused on precision and survival. The flight deck was a crucible, testing courage and skill under conditions that pushed men to the absolute limits. Every launch, every landing, every emergency response was a testament to the discipline, training, and bravery of those who risked everything for the ship and for each other. Life on the deck of the USS Essex was raw, intense, and unrelenting, and it was here that the courage of a generation was forged in steel, fire, and smoke.
Below the flight deck, the USS Essex was a completely different world, one that tested the endurance and resilience of every sailor aboard. The ship's 3,000 men were packed into tight compartments, stacked 3 levels deep, each bunk barely wide enough to stretch out. Privacy was non-existent, and every sound echoed through narrow steel passageways, boots clanging on metal floors, tools dropped during maintenance, the muffled conversation of exhausted men. The air was heavy with the mingling smells of sweat, fuel, and the metallic tang of steel. Temperatures soared in the engine and boiler rooms, where steam hissed and heat radiated off massive machinery. Men worked in shifts around the clock, performing physically demanding tasks under extreme conditions, often with only a few hours of sleep, if any, before returning to the relentless cycle of duty. Sanitation was a constant struggle. With so many men living in such close quarters, latrines and showers were overwhelmed, lines stretching for hours. Water had to be rationed, and cleanliness was more about survival than comfort. Meals were served quickly in noisy, crowded mess halls, often consisting of basic rations that provided calories but little relief from monotony. Food had to be prepared for thousands at a time, and the cooks worked under extreme pressure, knowing that any disruption could create chaos for the already exhausted crew. But the most dangerous work was often below deck in the machinery spaces, storage compartments, and maintenance areas. Fires could erupt without warning, fueled by flammable liquids, electrical faults, or stray sparks. Firefighting crews trained relentlessly for these emergencies, moving with practiced precision through narrow corridors, connecting hoses, and sealing compartments to prevent the blaze from spreading. The danger was immediate and unforgiving. Hangar fires could consume the ship within minutes, and a single error could cost dozens of lives. Every sailor knew that the very steel of the ship could become a trap if disaster struck. The psychological weight of this knowledge was constant. Men endured the oppressive heat and constant noise, aware that each day might bring a sudden emergency, a kamikaze strike, or an onboard fire. Letters from home, quiet jokes, and small rituals like shared meals became lifelines, reminders of life beyond the steel walls. Crews adapted to extreme fatigue, finding ways to maintain focus even when body and mind screamed for rest. They learned to trust instinct, rely on one another, and act decisively under pressure. In these hidden corridors, courage was measured not by heroic gestures, but by the ability to perform each small task flawlessly under immense stress. Beyond the immediate physical challenges, the men faced the mental strain of isolation. Months at sea meant missing berths, holidays, and even the simplest comforts of home. The darkness of below-deck corridors amplified every worry and fear, and yet sailors found small ways to preserve hope. They told stories, shared memories, and kept morale alive with camaraderie. Music from a gramophone, a letter tucked into a locker, or a whispered joke could lift spirits in the oppressive heat and stifling steel. It was a constant battle, not only against the dangers of the ship, but against the slow erosion of the mind under endless tension. Life below deck was relentless, dangerous, and exhausting, yet it forged resilience, discipline, and an unbreakable bond among sailors, the invisible backbone of the USS Essex.
The Pacific was a vast, unforgiving expanse, but for the men aboard the USS Essex, it was also a battlefield. Every day carried the possibility of sudden, deadly encounters with the enemy. Kamikaze pilots, trained to crash directly into ships, approached from the horizon with terrifying precision, their engines screaming as they aimed for the flight deck. Deck crews knew the approach patterns, the warning signals, and yet the panic that rippled across the steel deck was impossible to eliminate entirely. Pilots and sailors alike understood that one impact could ignite fuel, detonate bombs, and turn the ship into an inferno within seconds. The tension was constant. Even during calm stretches of ocean, men scanned the skies for shadows, every cloud a potential threat. Torpedoes and dive bombers added to the unrelenting danger. Lookouts strained their eyes across the waves, tracking the faint glint of enemy ships and the telltale streak of a diving aircraft. Torpedo strikes could cripple engines or destroy entire sections of the ship, leaving hundreds trapped in steel compartments. Sailors drilled repeatedly in damage control procedures, knowing that quick action could mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. Fire teams, armed with hoses and portable pumps, moved like well-rehearsed soldiers, sealing off compartments and containing flames before they could spread. Every emergency tested the training, courage, and nerves of the crew. Even the pilots returning from missions carried danger back to the ship. Battle damage, low fuel, or misjudged landings could create secondary crises on the already crowded flight deck. Arresting cables snapped under stress, planes skidded dangerously, and deck crews had to act instantly to prevent collisions. One misstep could crush a man beneath the wheels or fling him into the ocean. Despite the chaos, the crews performed with near military precision, each man a crucial link in the chain of survival. The psychological strain of constant threat was immense. Sleep became a luxury few could afford, and the awareness that death could arrive in a single kamikaze strike or torpedo attack weighed heavily on every sailor. Many men carried the memory of ships they had seen destroyed, the screams and smoke etched into their minds. Yet, in the midst of fear, discipline and training prevailed. Men worked tirelessly, moving with focus and purpose, knowing that panic could spread faster than any enemy weapon. Every successful defense, every plane launched and recovered, reinforced the fragile confidence that allowed the ship to function under extreme stress. Combat on the Pacific was unpredictable. Sometimes enemy attacks arrived in waves, relentless and brutal. Other times they were fleeting, testing nerves rather than strength. Radar operators, gunners, and lookouts all played their part, each aware that a single moment of hesitation could be fatal. Anti-aircraft guns roared constantly, tracer rounds streaking across the sky, and sailors had to remain alert for hours on end, reacting instantly to any sign of danger. Even in these high-stakes conditions, sailors formed unbreakable bonds, relying on instinct, training, and trust to survive. The USS Essex, though massive and powerful, depended on every individual aboard to face danger head-on. The roar of engines, the scream of incoming planes, the hiss of fire hoses, and the constant knowledge of potential disaster created a world of chaos and courage. Life in combat was brutal, immediate, and relentless, yet it forged a generation of men who understood that survival demanded both skill and the bravery to act without hesitation. Even after the smoke cleared and the battle ended, the deck smelled of burning fuel and scorched metal, and the men's hands shook from adrenaline. Every day was a reminder that death could strike anywhere, at any moment. Yet the sailors endured, repaired, and prepared, readying themselves for the next wave, the next strike, the next moment when skill and courage would mean the difference between life and obliteration.
Even after the chaos of the flight deck and the hidden dangers below, life aboard the USS Essex demanded more than skill. It demanded courage. Every sailor carried the weight of responsibility, knowing that one mistake could cost lives or compromise the mission. Yet, amidst the roar of engines, the smell of fuel, and the constant threat of enemy attack, something remarkable emerged, a bond that tied men together tighter than steel. Friendships were forged in the heat of danger, in long hours of exhausting work, and in the shared understanding that survival depended on the man next to you. Trust became a lifeline, and camaraderie was the invisible force that allowed the crew to endure. Every task, no matter how small, carried significance. From fueling an aircraft, tightening a bolt, or manning an anti-aircraft gun, each action contributed to the safety of the ship and the success of the mission. Men learned to anticipate each other's movements, to act without hesitation, and to rely on instinct honed through experience. Discipline and routine provided a fragile stability, but it was the courage to face danger daily that defined life aboard the Essex. Even in moments of exhaustion or fear, sailors performed with a focus that bordered on instinct, carrying out their duties as if the ship itself were an extension of their own bodies. Letters from home, quiet jokes shared in the mess halls, and fleeting moments of humor offered glimpses of humanity amid the relentless pressures. Celebrations were brief, rest was minimal, and the knowledge of the vast, dangerous Pacific stretched endlessly beyond the horizon. Yet, even under these conditions, sailors found ways to sustain morale, to remind themselves that life existed beyond the steel walls. Each small act of resilience became a testament to their fortitude. The legacy of the Essex and her crew was built not only on victories and missions completed, but on the endurance of ordinary men performing extraordinary tasks under impossible conditions. The courage displayed in every launch, every firefighting drill, and every defensive maneuver was part of a broader story of sacrifice and determination. These men endured long stretches away from family, faced unrelenting danger, and lived with the knowledge that death could strike without warning. Yet they continued, day after day, hour after hour, performing with precision and bravery that few could comprehend. The bond between crew members went beyond survival. It became a form of unspoken heroism. Men watched each other's backs, learned each other's strengths, and pushed beyond fatigue to keep their comrades alive. The courage of a single sailor was magnified by the collective determination of the entire crew. Together, they became more than a ship's company. They became a living organism, each man a vital component in a machine that operated with uncanny precision despite chaos all around. When the USS Essex returned from missions, the scars of battle were evident on its steel deck, in the smoke that lingered, and in the exhaustion etched on the faces of its crew. Yet every scar told a story of endurance, every worn uniform a tale of survival, and every successful mission a testament to courage and unity. Life aboard the Essex was harsh, relentless, and dangerous, but it produced men whose bravery and resilience left a lasting imprint on history. The story of this ship and its crew is a story of human determination, of extraordinary courage forged in fire, smoke, and the endless expanse of the Pacific, a reminder that even amidst the most brutal conditions, men can rise to perform the impossible together. Even years later, veterans would recall the sound of the engines, the smell of burning fuel, and the camaraderie that made impossible tasks manageable. They remembered the small acts of heroism that often went unnoticed, the quiet bravery that kept the ship afloat, and the unspoken understanding that every man's survival depended on his neighbor. It was these experiences, etched into memory, that defined the legacy of the USS Essex, a story of endurance, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit that endured long after the battles had ended.